Hey, what's up everyone, it's Mir, and in today's video I want to go over Ed, of course, being the latest playable character for Street Fighter 6. It just released some time ago, and I wanted to make a video explaining some of his signature moves, both for people that want to learn them, so that they might figure out some strategies on how to apply these moves to their own game plan, but also for people that are just playing online and maybe they struggle to deal with these moves and they want to know of how to defeat them. Today I'll stick to, like I said, his signature moves, his most important ones, specials, in particular one of his supers. Maybe I'll make another video talking about his normals, those are also quite important, but I want to keep the scope of this video fairly contained so that, you know, it's easy to understand. So let's immediately talk about the first move, which is his Psycho Knuckle, which, just like in Street Fighter 5, you can perform by holding down the heavy punch input. Unlike Street Fighter 5, where you only had kind of like a feint and a fully charged version where you would get the Psycho Knuckle, in this game you have access to a partially charged version that you can get by releasing the heavy punch the moment Ed's hand starts glowing. And this move actually has different frame data. If I turn on the frame data, you'll see that if I hit both the partially charged version and the fully charged version give me a crumple, the damage is different. However, if I put the dummy to block, as you can see there on block all, if I do the partially charged version, you will see that Ed is -2. That means Ed's turns over and the other person can press a button and defeat Ed. However, if I do the fully charged version, which has a different sound effect on top of the animation obviously playing out until the end, you'll see that actually Ed is +4 here when he does the Psycho Knuckle, so it's his turn. However, he's not close enough to throw you here. He's actually pretty far, as you can see, and if he goes for his low confirm, it actually doesn't work. So this is something important to note. Ed's low confirm is a little bit short range, so he has to be quite close to you. And in a situation like this, it's actually fairly safe to walk back on Ed, because he cannot actually really throw you. And if he wants to prevent you from walking back, he has to kind of like commit with crouching medium punch, maybe do something like crouching medium punch drive rush. So it's something worth keeping in mind. Another thing that Ed can do in this game that he couldn't in the previous game is that now he has a command dash, so he doesn't have to let rock the entire animation of the Psycho Knuckle. He actually can cancel it with a forward command dash. It's called a kill rush, that's the name of the move. Normally he has a backwards version as well. However, from the standing heavy punch, I can only do the forward cancel, and this can be useful in particular if the opponent is trying to neutral jump the Psycho Knuckle, as then Ed can use the kill rush to approach and do one of the follow-ups to hit the opponent out of the air, for example. Now, one pretty obvious use for Psycho Knuckle is that if you're full screen, both the partially charged version and the fully charged version will straight up lead you to the opponent on the other side of the screen. This will always travel full screen. So a very obvious use for this is just to try and get in, kind of like bulldog your way in. But another use that it has is that it actually is able to delete fireballs. So as you can see here, I have the other Ed to do the Psycho Knuckle. And if I do my own fireball, you'll see that actually Ed is able to kind of like blast through it. This only applies to the fully charged version, and as you saw right there, with the correct timing, you'll still be able to block afterwards, because Ed still has to travel. It deletes the fireballs, not actually projectile invulnerable, so it actually gives you some extra time to be able to block, but it's still a great way in, as you can see. So you have a few ways of dealing with this move. Of course, as I've mentioned before, one thing that you can do is neutral jump it, especially from full screen. It's fairly safe. However, you don't really get a punish. In some situations, you can jump back and hit Ed with a cross-up. If you don't have a particularly deep cross-up, it might be a little bit difficult, but it is definitely possible. Another thing you can do is you can attempt to parry this move. If you have the correct timing, you will be able to perfect parry it and score a punish. So that's obviously the preferred way of using the parry. But if you screw it up, just like I did right there, you can get hit, so you have to be careful. Better to be early rather than late. That's an example of a punish that Ed can score. Another thing that you can do is that you can use drive impact on reaction. If you use drive impact, Ed doesn't actually go through you, and you will be able to hit him consistently in the front. However, of course, Ed can feint this move with the kill rush, and especially if he's doing it from full screen, you actually won't be able to do anything about the fact that you bit into drive impact, so you won't hit the kill rush itself. So you have to be mindful of that as well. Something that is worth noting is that the Psycho Knuckle cannot be cancelled into super, no matter how hard you try. So if the opponent correctly DIs it, there's nothing that Ed can do to save himself. Basically, it is a reliable answer, just a little bit more committal for the reasons I mentioned before. Another quirk of this move is that because it is considered actually a normal, or I guess a unique attack, it maintains the same properties the normals have. So like just like how you can do drive rush steady heavy punch and you know, get extra frames of block from -2 to +2, you actually can do the same thing with the Psycho Knuckle. As you can see, Ed still glows blue, and I did the fully charged version there, which normally is +4 on block. However, with the drive rush it becomes +8, which is pretty funny, but it doesn't really have that many practical applications, especially because the drive rush still gives you a little bit of the momentum, so you actually end up fairly close to the opponent when you do that. However, one of the uses that you could probably argue that, you know, can have some surprise factors, that you can do a partially charged Knuckle, which normally would be unsafe, or rather not unsafe, but like -2, it would be the end of your turn, now becomes +2, which means that maybe someone that doesn't know the situation very well might be thinking that it's their turn here, but instead you'd be able to counter hit them and get the turn back yourself. I wouldn't rely on the strategy too much though, it's much more of a gimmick, but it's worth keeping in mind. It can happen in a match. The next move I want to talk about is the Psycho Flicker and Psycho Snatcher. In this game, it's of course I go for a kick. As you can see, you get this fireball looking thing that travels instantly across the screen. There's 3 different angles. Light goes straight but doesn't have much range. Medium goes further but it is a longer startup, and then the heavy goes up. However, the unique part about this move is that if you hold it down until you see Ed's hand glow, you'll see you get the Psycho Snatcher from Street Fighter 5, basically is V skill 1. And this on hit, of course, gives you a combo. You can follow up with whatever you have. You can spend meter. You can decide what to do here. The reward is actually quite high. And you can do this from all 3 versions. So you can see that you can do it even from the N-tier version. And another important thing is that you can hold this down for quite long, but you can also cancel it with your kill rush, both forwards and backwards, which is particularly unique because as standing heavy punch you can only charge and cancel forward, but this one you can also cancel backwards for extra safety, which is quite nice. And the other important feature of this is that on block, while this is relatively unsafe, but you know, with some pushback you can use it in neutral fairly effectively, the Psycho Snatcher is actually plus on block, and it is +4, which is quite a lot. It means you can frame trap into his mediums, and of course it pulls the opponent in, as you can see, from any range that it connects, and it puts you right in front of them at +4, so like you have a full-on strike throw mix-up, which is quite useful. So this is a move that you will see very often from Ed players, especially during block strings. You know, they'll do whatever, like standing heavy punch into Snatcher, trying to reset you and get some plus frames this way. They can also use the OD version, which will never give you a flicker. It will always give you a Snatcher, and this is just as plus as the normal charge Snatcher like this. They're both +4. However, it's important to note that the OD version cannot be cancelled out of. I'm trying to cancel right now, nothing happens. So if someone is trying to, for example, do something like, say, standing heavy punch on block into the OD Snatcher to try and reset you, you actually have a little window there to do something where Ed cannot do anything about. They cannot, you know, they cannot pretend to cancel into it and back away, for example. And one of the best answers against this move, especially when it is used in block strings like this, is you can use an invincible move or a DI, and actually works quite well, as I'll demonstrate in a second. So I'm going to do standing heavy punch into Kuroseko forward kick. As you can see, that's a true block string. They cannot actually DI in between. However, if you charge it for a Snatcher, there's nothing I can do. I will always get hit by the DI, especially if I let go. It will be a punish counter, so I will get crumpled. If I try to cancel out of this, I will still get hit. Of course, if I go forward, it's the same deal. There's not really much I can do. And especially if you go into the OD version, there's nothing I can do. Like, that guarantees a hit from the DI, full crumple combo, and you know, a lot of damage. So you have to be careful, and this is something that the Ed player has to be mindful of if he's trying to reset you on offense, especially if you represent the threat of the drive impact. Of course, you cannot do you know, DI every time they do standing heavy punch on block, because if they don't do anything, they can bait and punish you with their own DI. So you have to be careful about that, of course. Another interesting option that you have against the Snatcher, if you don't want to get pulled in and subjected to the mix-up, is that you can actually parry it. And not, of course, just a perfect parry, which works just like a fireball, where it completely negates the block stun and the pushback, and if they're ready, you know, they can cancel that into a drive rush and punish you, for example, or, you know, do something out of the recovery of their perfect parry to punish you. But what I mean is that even a normal drive parry, you'll see it cuts down the amount of space that you get dragged by quite a big margin. It's more than half. So Ed is not in a range where he can throw you anymore. And this is fairly important to know, because it's actually fairly easy to time, right? You don't have to worry about the fact that you have to do a perfect parry, because you can just hold down parry. Of course, if the Ed player sees that you're holding parry a lot when he's doing a Snatcher, he can cancel it with the kill rush forward and throw you for a punish counter. So you have to be mindful about that as well. But it is definitely a strong option against it, because it will also replenish some of your drive gauge when you successfully parry it. Another use of the Cycle Flicker is that it actually has a projectile hitbox, as I mentioned before, so it can be used to delete opponents' projectiles. And this is fairly useful in Fireball Wars, because if you're holding it at the time that the opponent is throwing a Fireball, you can actually let go and punish their attempt, because the Cycle Snatcher, the fully charged version of the Cycle Flicker, actually has 2-hit durability, and it will let you blast through normal Fireballs pretty handily. However, it's important to know that it is still counted as a normal Fireball, so if the opponent is doing an OD Fireball, like for example that one, which is 2 hits, you will see that the charged Snatcher will unfortunately lose to it, because of how OD Fireballs work in Street Fighter 6. Interestingly enough, your own OD Snatcher has the same property, where even though it is a singular hit in this case, it will actually blast through any projectiles because of its OD properties. However, when it goes against another OD Fireball, again, this one is 2 hits, as you can see, I'm blocking 2 hits, you'll see that it loses because it only is a singular hit. So you need to apply some caution when you're using this against other people's Fireballs. Just like any Fireball, another universal option against the Cycle Flicker is to actually jump in at Ed, as the recovery can be quite long. The light version, which doesn't have that much range, is 45 frames, which is comparable to Ryu Fireball, but the medium version, which goes pretty far, is 49 total, so that can be quite slow. However, if you're jumping in on Ed, especially if you're trying to react to him charging for the Cycle Snatcher, you have to be careful, because you cannot tell the different versions apart, right? Like right here, I'm charging the medium version. This is the light version that I'm charging. This is the heavy version that I'm charging. They all look the same. And of course, the heavy version actually can anti-air you. And if it is the charged version, you get a full Snatcher conversion. So the Ed player can basically bait you into trying to jump by holding the heavy version. If they see that you're staying on the ground, they can cancel it safely. And if you go for the jump, they can release and punish you for it. So be careful about that as well. There's another situation that is related to the Cycle Snatcher that happens in the corner, and it's actually related to his throw loops. So normally you can do a throw loop by throwing you, then dashing, walking, and throwing you again, or you can do a throw loop by doing his kill rush command dash to throw you again. However, both of these options, if I have the opponent to wake up with, like a reversal, like an OD Cycle Uppercut, like in that case, you will see that if I do those two options, unfortunately, I lose to the wake up option, right? Like I lose the reversal because I'm close to the opponent and it will catch the recovery of my throw. However, we have another solution here if you want to be a little bit safer. And after the throw, basically what you will do is that you will do a meaty Cycle Snatcher. And the Cycle Snatcher, of course, if the opponent blocks it, puts you right in his face at +4, and so he can throw you again, right? And this is basically a throw loop because it will put you exactly in the same situation over and over. However, this will make it so that it's safe against reversals of this kind, because the reversals actually won't be able to reach you, as you can see right here. And then Ed will be able to punish for a reversal, especially if it's one with a lot of recovery like a Shoryuken. And the interesting part about this is that if the opponent is doing something like a level 1, this will also not work, because the Cycle Snatcher actually is considered a projectile, and level 1s are not invulnerable to projectiles. So you can use that to be safe against those sort of options as well, especially, for example, if the character doesn't have a normal reversal and they have to use their level 1 super. So this situation seems really powerful, right? Because you have basically a throw loop that you cannot escape off by jumping out, because this is meaty. If you try to press anything, you will get hit. You cannot backdash, you cannot use a super, you cannot use a reversal because you know, you're too far away. So how do you deal with this situation? Well, the most obvious answer here is that if you have drive gauge, you can actually parry out of this situation, because as I mentioned before, this cuts down the distance at which you're pulled quite significantly, and Ed doesn't actually have a mix-up here, or at least not with a throw, because you're too far away. Of course, if you score a perfect parry, it's even better, because then you don't get pulled in at all. As I showed before, you will be in the same situation right there in the corner, where you just don't move whatsoever. But even a normal parry is fine. Of course, if Ed thinks that you're gonna do this, they can go for a big read where they will cancel this and go for a throw out of the kill rush. But this is fairly dangerous, because the kill rush itself doesn't really have any invulnerability. So if you're not parrying, you can react to them and you know, hit them out of it. It's very important to be aware of the optional parry here, because it significantly cuts down the risk of the situation, as Ed is not really in a threatening position after. Even though he's at plus frames, you really cannot threaten the throw, so you can kind of like safely block it out. And it basically forces Ed to do the other throw loops that are more dangerous to him, because he actually has to approach you, right? And at that moment, that enables you to use your own reversals to your advantage, so that you can actually get him off of you if you want. Another very common Ed move is a Cycle Blitz, which is Corsico back punch, and this is 1, 2, 3 from Street Fighter V. However, unlike Street Fighter V, this move is not safe in this game. The light version is -5, which means every character can punish it, and the medium and heavy version are actually -12, which makes them really punishable. And the light version in particular, even though it's only -5, it barely has any pushback, so every character can actually punish this basically at any range where they can block it. And if it had been only -4, some characters might have struggled, like Ed, for example, has poor 4-frame options. But with -5, you know, with crouching light kick, he can basically punish you from anywhere. And this is true for many other characters. You know, you might have a standing light kick or a standing light punch that is not 4 frames, and you can use that to punish Ed. And make sure that you do, because this move, like I said, is not safe, and it's very difficult to make safe, if even possible at all. And something that is instead worth mentioning is that the OD version of this move is completely safe at -3. So you have to be aware of this one. But he's fairly close to you, so you can threaten with a throw or, you know, like a shimmy or whatever. So Ed is still not in the best situation when he does this. If you're an Ed player and, you know, you want to end the block string with something, it's much better to end with a fireball. You can do only one hit of the fireball, for example, or even do the follow-up, and that will create some distance between you and the opponent. So even though the fireball is -6, as you can see, it's actually kind of difficult to punish here, as opposed to finishing a block string into the Cycle Blitz, which leaves you at -5, like I said, with barely any pushback. So get it into the muscle memory of, you know, like going for the fireball ender for your block strings. And if you want to be particularly safe, you can do the OD fireball, which is -2. And I guess another thing about this fireball that's pretty interesting is that you would expect this fireball to be better in the corner, as they usually are, or I mean in general at least be plus on block. But it's always -2, even if you only do the first part, it's -2. And if you do the follow-up, it's -2. So don't let people get away with this on block, in the sense that, you know, like just don't let them believe that they have plus frames if they're the Ed players. And you can actually press after eating an OD fireball on block. The only thing is that it's not unsafe, basically, and you can use it to end strings. Now, the last move I want to talk about is Ed's level 2, Cycle Cannon. So this move is particularly intimidating, especially if you use the light version, because it's this slow moving projectile, it's a bunch of hits, it travels in front of Ed. What Ed can do is that he can push you out of it and kind of like force you to block it, but then, you know, like if you are not ready for the dash, you can get thrown and then you're back into it. And, you know, it looks really scary, but it's not quite as powerful as you might think. A lot of people compared this super with Rashid's level 2. However, unlike Rashid, this super doesn't empower any of Ed's special moves. He doesn't get a wind effect like Rashid does. And also, Ed doesn't have any overhead on the ground. So basically, the only way that he has to threaten a high-low mix-up is that he has to make you block a jump in, or do, for example, an empty jump low, which is much more limited, of course, than what Rashid can do with his grounded overhead. So let's see what are your options on defense. So as I was mentioning, one of the obvious solutions that you have is that you can jump over the super, especially if the other Ed player is being too careless and is like dashing after it, trying to get to you, or maybe drive rushing. The jump is a fairly safe option, but of course Ed can bait it out and anti-air you with his DP, for example, or even meeting you in the air with a jumping heavy kick. And in some of these situations, Ed can actually make you land into the super and you know, combo you from there. So you have to be careful with that. Another thing that you can do is you can parry the super so that you don't have to worry about any high-low mix-up, and that you won't lose any drive gauge that way. But of course, Ed can push you out of this parry by dashing towards you, or using his drive rush, or using his command dash to move you out of the way and then throw you. So you have to be careful about that. And to be honest, like, the best option is to just block it. The drive gauge damage that you take is not that high, it's only half a bar. Of course, this could be on top of anything that Ed might press on you, but this is the safest option because Ed, like I said, doesn't have an overhead low mix-up. So you can kind of like just sit there and block, and that is fairly effective for you. Of course, if the Ed player recognizes that you're just going to sit there and block the super, you can do stuff like charging a cycle Knuckle, and then you're forced into this pincer situation where you have to block the fireball again, and you can go for a shimmy, or you can go for a throw, you can go for a strike. So the mix-up is not as linear as it might seem, but it's still not quite as powerful as other supers. So actually just blocking it out often works in your advantage. So something worth noting about this super is that, especially if you're not aware of how the super freeze looks, it actually comes out really quickly. Like, the fireball comes out surprisingly quick, and if you want to time your reversal, in case an Ed does it very close to you like this, you actually have to be fairly on point with the timing. So I wanted to share a trick that works in Street Fighter 6 that is actually very convenient for situations like these where you're unsure when you know, like a super freeze is going to end, for example. And this comes particularly in handy for characters with charge moves like Guile or Honda that might have reversals that are on a charge. So what you can do is that basically during any super freeze, if you hold down a button, it will store that input so that it comes out the moment the super freeze is done. So what does that mean for us? So I will do my reversal motion. In this case, is going to be a DP. So forward, down, down, forward, and 2 punches for Ed, right? That will give me his cycle upper. And I will hold down the light punch and medium punch button, which is what I use to get the OD version, during the super freeze. And it will guarantee that it will come out no matter what, the first available frame after the super freeze is over. Just watch. I'm going to do it very early. As you can see, I already did it. I'm holding down the buttons, and the special move came out immediately. And this works for other things as well, like, for example, Ed's level 3. I was holding down the punch button the entire time, and that guaranteed the super to come out immediately. So this is a useful solution for a problem like this, especially with a super that you might be, you know, a little bit uncomfortable with for what the timing is. And it's particularly convenient if you're a charge character, so you don't have to worry about, you know, timing precisely so that your charge, you know, doesn't go away. So this is a neat trick that you can apply to other situations as well. So this is more than enough for today. Of course, there's plenty of other stuff to cover. Ed is full of interesting normals and target combos that he can use that I might cover in another video. Of course, if you guys have any questions that you want me to answer, or someone else to answer, of course, just put them down in the comments below. Ed related or no. We have a Q&A series that I might resurrect if, like there's enough interesting questions. Of course, we're gonna have more videos coming out in the future, talking about Street Fighter content, discussion videos, guide videos, especially when Season 2 drops, whenever that is. So make sure to stay tuned to the channel, subscribe, all the good stuff. And I guess I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.